Now, in the Muslim understanding, because this world around us is a manifestation of God, whether or not we are as yet equipped to read it as such, and more precisely a manifestation of God in his aspect of limitless love, it is not fallen. Remember, if you look at the Quranic narratives of the fall, you'll find that Adam makes tawbah, he returns to God. God accepts that, and a line is drawn under original sin. Key distinction between Muslim and Christian types of spirituality is that Islam does not accept an idea of original sin. So the world is not fallen, and as such it almost glows with reminders of its divine provenance. And the Quran itself constantly celebrates nature as a system of signs, of ayat, as signposts, reminders of the divine reality. One of the most recurrent and characteristic features of the Quranic text. But in order to appreciate these signs, we have to learn the second basic virtue of Muslim spirituality, conveniently rhyming with the first, the Quranic virtue of Fikr, meditation, contemplation. Typical Quranic verse on the theme, for instance, "Verily in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the succession of night and day are signs for people of inward understanding. Those who remember God, whether they be standing, sitting, or on their sides, and who meditate on the creation of the heavens and the earth." In other words, how the heavens and earth are created. "Our Lord, you have not created all this in vain." Now, in texts such as this, the Quran invariably uses as its term for the human agent that grasps this reality is lub, one of the key elements of the Quran's vocabulary. So the verse is saying there are signs in this wonderful creation for those people who have lub, plural albab. Lub etymologically means a seed or a core. So it's here implying that there is a core or something within man that needs to grow and blossom. And this lub here is simply a metaphor for man's immortal, pre-existent, unfallen soul. The Quran is telling us that nature is translucent to those who have kept this lub within them pure. So the very first stage in the spiritual life, the Quran is suggesting, is to look at and try to look through the beautiful forms of nature. And in the Middle Ages, it was a very common form of Muslim piety for people simply to wander God's earth, marveling at the variety and brilliance of his creation. And this principle also helps us to understand why Muslim art and architecture has so often included vegetal and floral motifs. If you look at the mosaics on the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, for instance, or the illumination of a chapter heading in a medieval Quran, invariably you'll see the intertwining of plants and leaves, something which is profoundly satisfying to the Muslim aesthetic, precisely because it recalls this Quranic impetus, this Quranic idea that it is through nature that we perceive the divine. And the convention, of course, as Drs. Tabb and Aman so well explained to you, became more and more conventionalized over the year and stylized until the arabesque was born. The arabesque really is the classical archetypal expression of Islamic decorative art, because it's kind of repeated geometrical image of reality, a statement of the beautiful, intertwining, endlessly consistent patterns which God has set in the natural world, and whose radiance brings art and architecture back into line with the rest of creation. It's one reason, incidentally, why Muslim art has classically preferred abstract or vegetal motifs to human representation. In the Christian perspective, of course, the divine came into the world once only as a man. So the great symbol of contemplation in a church is the icon or the symbol of Christ. Because it's the theomorphic qualities of the God-man that provide the inspiration really for all Christian sacred art, whereas Islam sees the natural world as the manifestation of God's love. Hence we find the natural world invoked, albeit in these very abstract forms, in Muslim places of worship, and the complete absence of any figural representation. And there are a number of poems, and it's a recurrent theme in the spiritual literature and in little pious stories, that all of creation is praising God. This is in the Quran. All of creation is praising God. It is simply وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ sorry? Tasbihahum. Thank you. You do not understand their praising, their glorification of God. There's a nice little Turkish story that I heard recently in Istanbul of a saint and his followers. And they were gathered in their little lodge in Istanbul. And the saint was growing very old and he wanted to appoint a successor. And in order to test his followers to see who would deserve this distinction, he said, please go out today and bring me in the evening the most beautiful flowers you can find. And so all of the zealous disciples go around, and in the evening, some of them bring bunches of carnations, others bring beautiful tulips, roses, or whatever. And then one rather simple little man called Merkez Efendi comes with a dead flower and sets it humbly, apologetically before the saint. And everybody else is absolutely shocked, and they say, what is this? This is an insult. But Merkez Efendi explains it by saying, well, I went out into the world and I saw all of the beautiful flowers, but they were all praising God, so I was ashamed to pick them. Then I found one that had stopped, so I brought you that one. That's a fairly typical Muslim pious story that indicates how the natural world is seen as being something that is very much part of the divine order. So I've spoken briefly about Fikr and also introduced this concept of Thikr. I think since it's 10:30, you're probably in need of some material as well as spiritual sustenance. But as I say, because I've got so much to get through today, if we can be back within 15 or 20 minutes, I'd be grateful. Thank you.